Hey guys, it's Jane. I am going to talk a little bit about Kindred today, the book by Octavia E Butler. Here it is. This is the 25th anniversary edition, which I borrowed from my library. For those of you who are worried, I have very, very carefully unslipped the interlibrary loan thing off the front so I just could show you the cover, but now I put it back. I put it right back. I read this month and it's really stayed with me, and I've got a whole bunch of thoughts, and I'm going to see how many of them I can get out now in a semi-coherent fashion. But before I get into my thoughts about it, I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about the story. The central character is Dana, a modern African-American woman. She's a writer. She's married. The story is about an unexplained something happens which draws her into the past, and into a very specific past. She is drawn back to a number of incidents in the past involving a particular person. Initially, this person is a young boy, a white boy in the American South in slaveholding times, and it quickly becomes clear that she is being called back because his life is in danger. His life is in danger, and through some mechanism which is never explained in the book, she is called back to rescue him. And then a certain amount of time later, she is sent back to the present, and then less time has passed in the present than happened in the past. And then second time it happens, it's the same day. I think she's called back, and several years have passed, have transpired in the past, and the boy has grown up. And so basically, this is a story of this modern black woman's life being inextricably and unexplainably pulled back and linked to this boy come teenager come young man come man in his prime in slave-holding South. That's what it's about. So it's a really beautifully written story. It's for all that it's some of the subject matter is quite confronting. It's not a difficult book to follow. So some sci-fi fantasy books are just very difficult for beginner sci-fi fantasy readers because of structural elements, basically. It's written in such a way that's disorienting. This is not the case in this one. It's easy to follow. Now, some of my thoughts. I read this on the heels of doing quite a lot of thinking about character in stories, and I made a couple of videos about this that arose after having read The Gardens of the Moon, an epic fantasy novel with cast of thousands, and everybody's quite morally ambiguous, seemingly, and that provoked a whole bunch of thoughts about how you actually sift through who's a good character and who's a bad character. All that stuff was just turned 90 degrees, just twisted when I read Kindred. And I realised that a factor that I had not been taking into consideration is power. Because Dana, who is clearly the hero of this story, it's not in any way unclear who our through character is in this book. It's Dana. But she is put in a position where her power is stripped away piece by piece by piece as the story progresses. And you see her really struggling to come to grips with that in the course of the story. And as her power is taken away, she is increasingly put into completely invidious positions. Her trying to navigate what an appropriate moral response to those situations are is, for my mind, the most compelling part of this story. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the most confronting example of that to my mind. It comes it's about 2/3 of the way through the story. So if you are super sensitive about spoilers, you may want to mute it, and I will wave my hands or I'll put something on the screen when it's safe to come back. Having said that, I'm not going to tell you what outcome happens. I'm just going to tell you an incident. So I don't consider this to be a spoiler, so I'll leave that up to you. The boy growing into the man, the person that she's linked with, by this stage in the story, his father has died and he has inherited the holding and the slaves. And this has changed his attitude to his fellow man and woman quite distinctly, because, power corrupts. And in particular, there is a black woman who grew up next door, basically, to his landholding, a free black woman. This girl and the boy had played together as children, and he'd always been sweet on her, basically. But she's married somebody else. Unfortunately, she marries a man who is one of his slaves, and he uses his power over the situation to break up that family. And her response to that means that he is able to enslave her because of the laws at the time. And so this woman who he has pursued, who he has, romantic attachment to, and who has not reciprocated that, is suddenly in his power. What our anti-hero, our male main character does is he turns to Dana and he tells Dana that he is going to take this woman to his bed, whether she wants it or not. That he's in love with her, he's always wanted her, and now he is going to take her. But he says to Dana, it would be better for her if she came willingly. Because I don't want to hurt her, but I will. But I don't want to. And this friend of yours would be better off if she came willingly. And so what you need to do is you need to go and convince her to do that. You need to go and convince her to come to me willingly. So, what, if anything, is the right thing to do? Because he's right at some level. Physically, she would be better off if she went to him willingly. So, is she supposed to go and do what he's told her to do and try and persuade this woman to allow herself to become his concubine? And as I said, I'm not going to tell you what happens as a result of this, but reading this and her struggle with the situation, and this is just an extreme example of the things that happened to her and the positions that she was put in. And it made me realize that all of the stuff that I was talking about not standing on your dignity and all that sort of stuff, it only works if you have agency, if you have actual power to control your situation. Acting out of good character might look completely differently if you don't have that agency. Yeah, so look, this is a fantastic book, and I know I've talked for an age, I'm going to really quickly talk about just a couple of other things that came out from this book for me. This male character that I'm talking about is like a super super problematic character, because he is actually quite sympathetic a lot of the way through, and then you are so appalled but not really surprised when he turns bad. Or is he turning bad? Is he just taking the opportunities that present themselves to him in his situation? It was really, his character was really interesting in a loathsome way. And Dana's husband is another really, really, really interesting problematic character. I don't have time to go into all of that, but the fact that his concern for her, first and foremost, is about whether she's been raped, and that his fears are kind of allayed when she tells him that she hasn't been raped. I mean, she's been enslaved, but she wasn't raped, so that's okay. Yeah, he is a really interesting and problematic character as well. I did have other things to say, but I know this video has gone so long that I really need to stop. I highly recommend this book. It's the first Octavia E Butler that I've read, and it won't be the last. I hope you're all well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!